Hi, my name is Debra R. Richardson of Debra R. Richardson LLC, and I work with you to help you clean up your vendor data, clean up your vendor processes so that you can pay the right vendor. Now, this week's Vendor Master File Tip of the Week, I'm going to start calling these my year-end tips because at the time that this is going to be published, it's right before Thanksgiving, and right after Thanksgiving is the technical start for some of you of the year-end rush. And so this tip is use the one-time vendor type to your advantage during year end. And let's talk about what I mean by that. So we all know that vendor, right? The vendor that is going to have an invoice that all of a sudden pops up, and it's to giving them the benefit of the doubt, that invoice has probably been sitting on the internal team members desk like all year in their inbox somewhere, and then all of a sudden in December it needs to be paid, but your vendor doesn't want to submit a W-9 for, because technically, right, they don't want to, they're a smaller vendor, they don't want to claim the income, and so they'll talk about, this invoice is only $599 because for some reason everybody knows that $600 threshold for the IRS to make a vendor reportable, even though, or that payment reportable, even though the that threshold is different depending on the payment. But anyway, they'll give excuses. You already used my service, so you got to pay me. You already received my product. I'm going to send you to collections because you didn't pay me. Why do I got to send my W-9? It's why do you need it? You don't need it. I'm not going to be reported. The amount is too low. Whatever that explanation is, you do have to pay the vendor. And if you can just not get, if you can't get that W-9 out of them, and if you can't get the tax ID number, because that's what you really need. Technically, you don't need the W-9, but don't tell them that. You really need the taxpayer identification number, whether it's the EIN or the SSN, but they won't give you that either. So use your current process, which if they don't give you the taxpayer ID number, withhold 24%. Now that is typically enough incentive to get any vendor, especially a smaller vendor, to give you their accurate W-9. But if they still don't, make them a one-time vendor. Why is this relevant? It's because with most systems, if you set them up as a one-time vendor, the system will automatically inactivate them after that payment. And if they don't, the system doesn't automatically inactivate them, then you go in and activate them. And why do you want to do that? Because if they want to do business, or if your internal employee wants to do business with that vendor again, then because they are inactive, it should trigger your process to treat all inactive vendors as new vendors and require supporting documentation, the same required documents that you do for new vendors. Now, you can use the same vendor record if possible, depending on your system, setting them up as a one-time vendor. But what this does is it allows them to not circumvent the process to be set up in your vendor master file with whatever excuses they gave, and then be a legitimate vendor go forward. It means that you can make that one payment, but then next time ask them for or require supporting documentation. And keep in mind, they can no longer say, right, you're not going to use me again, because this will be a multiple use vendor at that point. So no more excuses, because we've heard that too, not only from the vendors, but again from the internal team members. So use it to your advantage and inactivate them after the payment. And then if they need to be used again, require the same supporting documentation that you require for new vendors. All right, so if you would like more information on how to improve your vendor process, please go to my website at debrarrichardson.com for free tools and resources to avoid fraud, regulatory fines, and just overall bad vendor data. So good luck and be sure to subscribe for more year-end vendor tips and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified next Tuesday for the next Vendor Master File tip of the week.